I now call upon Professor Shantha01 of the University of Peradeniya. His subject is attitudinal changes as a necessary condition for national level social integration in Sri Lanka.
Good afternoon, everybody. Honorable Minister Saratha Munugama, the chairman of the session, and the others in the head table. Honorable Minister Champika Ranawaka, Presidential Secretary Lalit Veeratunga, Vice Chancellor and Deputy Vice Chancellor of the Kothalavala Defence University, officers of the Army, Navy, and the Air Force, and the distinguished guest. It's a great honor to be here today. You know, I have been coming to Kothalavala Defence University for the last 6 years for the defense program. Before 2009, May 19th, when I left Peradeniya, my wife used to say, "Come back home alive." After 2009, May 19th, that statement was never uttered. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay. I used to say that to my son before that year when he went to Trinity College, asking him to come home alive. Now, he doesn't go to Trinity, but he comes to Colombo, but I don't have to say that. Thank you, gentlemen. Let's go to the presentation. This is a title given to me, Attitudinal Changes as a Necessary Condition for National Level Social Integration in Sri Lanka. Let me tell you just two things that are not in the presentation. Attitudes comes from two sources. One is a material reality that we live in. Those attitudes are facts. Then attitudes are also formed by the ideology. They are not facts, they are fantasies. With respect to the problem that we have been facing in this country, we have both these attitudes. Unfortunately, very often what is discussed under the rubric of attitude is not the factual ground realities, but the fantasies of some of the people carrying there in their own mind. Often, these are ideological extremist fantasies. I get 15 minutes, sir? Yeah. Okay, within 15 minutes I'll finish it. 5 topics. First, to talk about these attitudes or changes necessary, we need to know what is a state and a nation. What are the attitudes detrimental to the national integration, and who is responsible for that detrimental attitudes? Then attitudes that are supportive of national integration, and whose responsibility is it to create that attitude? There are a lot of lawyers here. I may be even wrong here. State is a legal entity. Citizenship is also a legal entity. You see, Prabhakaran, while fighting against Sri Lankan state, he was, to the best of my knowledge, he was a Sri Lankan citizen. Okay? But, ladies and gentlemen, the concept of nation is not a legal entity. We call United Nations, but it's really United States. Nation is an affectual entity. It is something in your heart. That is why we have an identity card which says that we are a Sri Lankan citizen, but that identity card doesn't say that I am a member of a Sri Lankan nation. It cannot be said. It is in your heart. So membership of a nation is too affectual. And that is why the level of identity with a nation, with any nation for that matter, depends on one's attitude towards the state. While Prabhakaran is a Sri Lankan citizen, he was never a member of the Sri Lankan nation. He refused to be. Okay? So that difference we need to know. I don't think there is a problem of citizenship of Sri Lanka. Even Prabhakaran is a citizen. But the problem is we don't have Sri Lankan nationals, nations, members of a Sri Lankan nation. How many of us would identify effectually, not artificially, that we are members of a Sri Lankan nation? That's one of the problems. Now, attitudes detrimental to the national integration. These are taken from the newspapers, academic writing, political propaganda, speeches made in the parliament, United Nations, you name it. Okay? One is a very prominent attitude that is found everywhere. That Sri Lanka is a Sinhalese state. Very often these attitudes are inculcated by the Tamil nationalists and extremists who have been arguing against Sri Lanka. I was doing my sabbatical in UCLA, and the UCLA library has a Sri Lankan section. Most of the books that was there were actually written by in support of Tamil nationalism. And so I guess anyone who went to the Sri Lankan section at UCLA to learn about Sri Lanka, they would come up with a totally different picture than the reality of the country. Second detrimental attitude is there are two nations in Sri Lanka. Okay? There is a Sinhala nation and then there is a Tamil nation. Third detrimental attitude is that there is an exclusive Tamil homeland in the northern and eastern province. You created the provinces, your ancestors, when they were here, the British. But when they drew the boundaries of the northern and eastern province, they were drawing the boundary, they were doing it for convenience, administrative convenience. They were never demarcating a Tamil homeland. Okay? And the other one, well, I'm repeating here again, the Sri Lanka is a Sinhalese state. Sorry about the repetition. Then minorities, especially the Tamils, are permanently discriminated in this country. Okay? These are attitudes which are detrimental to the national integration, and also these are the attitudes that have emerged from ideological postulates more than the ground realities. Now, who is responsible for creating these attitudes in this country? Extremist ideologists among both the Tamils and the Sinhalese. Okay? LTT, primarily LTT and the Tamil extremists. You need to read their propaganda, their books, all that. Then the expedient political leaders among both the Tamils and the Sinhalese. While today we are very proud that we have won the war, there was a time our own politicians were using the war. Okay? Those are the historical realities. We know about it. Nothing to hide. Then, of course, I feel ashamed, being an intellectual myself. Some of my colleagues, some of them who were at Peradeniya University, then left. Some of them are still there. Intellectuals and apologists who nurtured the unrealistic Tamil nationalist ideology, supported them. They appeared in the LTT websites. They wrote books about it. Okay? It's one thing to sympathize with Tamil nationalism and the rightful grievances that Gomin was talking about. But supporting Tamil separatist ideology is a totally different game altogether. Sadly, many of those